It was a gray November morning, and the rain fell lightly over the quiet cemetery. The air was cold, heavy with sadness. Victoria Blackwood stepped out of her black car, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Her heels clicked softly against the wet stone path as she walked toward her son Adrienne's grave. She came here once a year, alone, dressed in black from head to toe. Her face calm, but her heart still broken. But today, something was different. As she approached the marble headstone, she stopped. In front of the grave knelt a young black woman, in a diner uniform, holding a little boy close to her chest. Both of them were crying deep, silent tears that said this wasn't their first visit. Victoria froze. She didn't recognize either of them. Her grip tightened around the flowers. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "This is a private place." The woman turned, her eyes red, her face still wet with tears. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know anyone would be here today." Victoria looked closer. The boy, maybe 4 years old, had bright green eyes. Adrienne's eyes. Her eyes. "Who are you?" Victoria asked, her voice low but firm. The woman stood up slowly. "My name is Jasmine," she said. "And this is Tyler." Victoria's eyes didn't move from the child. Her heart thudded in her chest. "Why are you here?" Jasmine looked down at Tyler, then back at Victoria. Her voice was steady, but full of pain. Because Adrienne was his father. The world seemed to spin. The bouquet slipped from Victoria's hands, the lilies scattering on the wet stone. For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the soft rain falling over 3 people whose lives were about to change forever. Victoria didn't sleep much that night. The image of the little boy's green eyes kept flashing through her mind. Adrienne had been gone for 3 years, and in all that time, Victoria had believed she knew everything there was to know about his life. But now, this woman, this waitress, was saying he had a child, and not just any child, a child that looked just like him. By morning, Victoria had made up her mind. She called her private investigator, someone she had used before when dealing with business rivals or high-stakes deals. This time, the job was personal. She needed to know everything about Jasmine Washington. Later that day, files were spread across Victoria's desk. Photos, documents, and background reports all focused on one woman. Jasmine was in her mid-20s. She worked 2 jobs, one of them at Bell's Diner in town. She lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment on the poor side of the city. No college degree, no known family, no husband, no legal documents that showed she had ever given birth. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "There's no birth certificate?" she asked. Her assistant, David, shook his head. "Nothing official." "It's like the boy just appeared out of nowhere." Victoria leaned back in her chair, staring at a photo of Tyler playing on a worn-down playground. If Adrienne really was his father, then why had he hidden them? Why hadn't he told her? There were too many questions and not enough answers. One thing was clear to Victoria, though this situation wasn't simple, and whoever Jasmine really was, she wasn't just a waitress with a secret. She was someone hiding something much bigger. The next day, Jasmine stood outside the tall glass building of Blackwood Industries. Dressed in the only suit, she owned a plain navy one she had bought second-hand. She looked up at the 60-story tower, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The walls were polished, the floor silent, and every person she passed wore suits that probably cost more than her rent. She was nervous, but she didn't let it show. Victoria sat at the top floor, waiting. When Jasmine entered, she didn't bother with small talk. "Sit down," she said, pointing to a chair that was placed lower than her own. Jasmine didn't move. "I'd rather stand," she replied. Victoria opened a folder in front of her and began reading aloud. "No college degree, 2 jobs, 1-bedroom apartment, raising a child alone, hard life." Her words were cold, but Jasmine stayed calm. "I do what I have to," Jasmine said. "Tyler is loved. He's safe. That's what matters." Victoria leaned forward and slid a check across the desk. $200,000. "You can visit him on weekends. He'll live with me. Private school, top doctors, everything Adrienne would have wanted." Jasmine looked at the check. Her hands didn't move. Her voice didn't shake. "You're trying to buy my son," she said. Victoria's tone hardened. "He's not your son. He's my grandson. Blood of my blood. He belongs with us." Jasmine laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He calls me Mom. I stayed up with him when he had fevers. I packed his lunch every day. I taught him to read." That's not just blood. That's being a parent. Victoria stood up, clearly annoyed. You're a waitress. You can't give him the life we can. And you didn't give Adrien what he needed either. Jasmine shot back. He told me what it was like to grow up in your world. Cold. Distant. All money. No love. For a few seconds, neither woman spoke. Then, slowly, Jasmine picked up the check and tore it in two. The pieces fluttered to the floor like broken promises. Tyler isn't for sale, she said. Victoria's voice dropped, low and angry. Then we'll do it the hard way. Jasmine didn't flinch. Good, she replied. I'm ready. Then she turned and walked out, leaving Victoria alone and more shaken than she wanted to admit. Jasmine walked into her apartment later that evening, her shoulders tight from the meeting with Victoria. Tyler was already asleep, curled up with his favorite stuffed bear. The lights were dim and the place was quiet, but Jasmine didn't rest. She pulled out a worn notebook from the drawer, flipped through pages filled with notes, names, and plans. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. Within an hour, 3 people were sitting around her small living room. There was Dr. Michael Chun, a respected law professor, Amanda Torres, a sharp journalist who had exposed big scandals before, and finally, Helen Jasmine's aunt, the woman who had raised her after her parents died. Helen wasn't just family, she was a retired business law professor, and the person who had taught Jasmine that the most powerful weapon wasn't money, it was knowledge. Jasmine didn't waste time. She laid out folders filled with documents, emails, photos, and legal notes. This is everything I've gathered over the last 3 years, she said. Every night class, every law book, every shift I worked, it was all for this. Dr. Chun looked through the papers and raised his eyebrows. You've done your homework. Amanda added, there's enough here to open an investigation into Blackwood Industries, bribery, fraud, environmental violations. This isn't just about custody anymore. This is about justice. Helen nodded. Victoria thinks you're just a waitress, but she has no idea what you've been building behind the scenes. Jasmine sat quietly for a moment, looking down at a picture of Tyler and Adrienne. She threatened to take him away. She said I wasn't enough, but I've been preparing for this moment since Adrienne died. I made a promise to him and I won't break it. They all knew this wasn't going to be easy, but one thing was clear. Jasmine wasn't alone, and she wasn't the same girl Victoria thought she was. She had a plan and people who believed in her. 3 days after the meeting at Victoria's office, the first legal notice landed on Jasmine's doorstep. As expected, Victoria had filed for custody. The document was cold and official, full of legal terms, but the message was clear: she was coming for Tyler. Jasmine didn't panic. She called her team that same night in Jasmine's small apartment. The living room table was covered in legal folders and evidence. Dr. Chun had already drafted a response. Amanda was preparing a media packet with proof of Victoria's shady business deals. Helen went over Jasmine's statement line by line, making sure everything was airtight. Then came the biggest move. Jasmine secured legal help from one of the top law firms in the country, Morrison, Caldwell, and Pierce. They had a strong record in civil rights cases and agreed to represent her for free. When Victoria's lawyer, Richard Thornton, found out, he called her right away. She got Morrison, Caldwell, and Pierce, he said, his voice shaking. And they're not just helping, they're already filing for protective custody. Victoria couldn't believe it. How does a waitress get lawyers like that? She shouted into the phone. She paced back and forth in her office, furious. This is war. Back at Jasmine's place, it was calm but focused. They knew Victoria had money, power, and connections. But Jasmine had something else: truth. She had years of documents showing fraud, bribery, even illegal business deals. She had witnesses. She had a team that believed in her. This wasn't just about keeping Tyler anymore. It was about standing up to someone who thought she could buy anything, even someone's child. And Jasmine was ready to fight with everything. Victoria sat alone in her office, flipping through the papers her lawyer had just handed her. Her hands trembled slightly. The name on the document, Jessica Blackwood, hit her like a punch to the chest. It couldn't be, but it was Tyler's. Mother wasn't just some random girl. She was family. Jessica was the daughter of Robert Blackwood, Victoria's own cousin, the same cousin she had pushed out of the family business decades ago. She remembered it now. The quiet arguments, the forged signatures, the way Robert had walked away, humiliated and betrayed. Years later, he had a daughter, but Victoria had never cared to find out what happened to her. Now she knew. Jessica had fallen in love with Adrian in college. They kept it a secret, afraid Victoria would ruin it. And when Jessica died giving birth to Tyler, Adrian had turned to Jasmine, his best friend, to raise his son. That wasn't all. Before Adrian died, he had discovered everything: his mother's lies, her crimes, the truth about Jessica's past. He had gathered documents, emails, and voice recordings. He was planning to confront Victoria, but before he could, he died in a car crash, and now all of that evidence was in Jasmine's hands. The truth hit Victoria hard. She hadn't just tried to take away someone's child. She had tried to erase the last piece of a son who had already been taken from her. The very empire she built, the money, the power, the name was stained with betrayal, and Jasmine, she had it all documented, every lie, every deal, every secret. Victoria had always believed she was the smartest person in the room, but now she realized she had been outplayed by the one person she thought didn't stand a chance. On Monday morning, Victoria woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. Dozens of missed calls, urgent messages, and one name flashing over and over: Amanda Torres. Her assistant, David, was already waiting outside her bedroom door, holding a tablet with a pale face. "You need to see this," he said quietly. The front page of the Metropolitan Journal stared back at her. In bold letters, "Blackwood Empire built on lies." Below it were photos, real documents, private emails, secret payments, and images of meetings Victoria thought were hidden. Reporters were already outside her company building, cameras rolling, showing employees leaving with boxes. Her hands shook as she called her lawyer. "How bad is it?" she asked. His answer was simple: "It's over." The IRS had issued search warrants. The FBI was already preparing charges. The stock was frozen. Her accounts were locked. Victoria tried to fight back. She dialed Jasmine's number with a mix of anger and panic. When Jasmine picked up, her voice was calm. "I see you've read the news," she said. "You did this," Victoria shouted. "You ruined everything I built." "No," Jasmine replied, steady as ever. "You did that. I just told the truth." Victoria tried to threaten her again, but Jasmine cut her off. "There are people watching now. Reporters, lawyers, the courts. You can't hide anymore." As the line went dead, Victoria sat in silence. For the first time in her life, no one answered her calls. No one feared her name. Everything she had used to control others' money, reputation, power was gone, and somewhere across town, a single mother who had once been overlooked, underestimated, and nearly broken, was finally winning. 2 years later, everything had changed. The small apartment was gone, replaced by a quiet home near a lake in Connecticut. Jasmine stood on the porch with a cup of tea in her hand, watching Tyler run through the garden, laughing as he chased their dog. Inside, a framed diploma hung on the wall, her law degree. She had earned it, one class at a time, in between working jobs and raising a child. Tyler had just started school at Phillips Academy, the same school Adrian once attended. He was already learning to play the violin, and his teacher said he was a natural. Jasmine smiled whenever she heard the soft music filling the house. One afternoon, Jasmine visited a place she never thought she'd go again: Millbrook State Prison. She sat across the table from Victoria, who now wore a plain orange uniform. The woman who once owned buildings and boardrooms now worked in the laundry room, earning pennies an hour. "I came because Tyler asked about you," Jasmine said. "He wanted to know if bad people can ever become good." Victoria didn't say much at first. She just looked at a picture Jasmine laying on the table. Tyler, smiling in his school uniform, holding a violin. "He's happy," Jasmine added. "He's loved, and he knows who he is." Victoria nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, you, what did you get out of all this?" Jasmine stood up. "I got to keep my promise. I gave Tyler what Adrian never had: love, presence, and peace." As she walked out, the sun hit the side of her face. She didn't need revenge. She had built something stronger, future, one that couldn't be bought or stolen, one Tyler could be proud of.